All right, I hope we're good. We're trying this on Wi-Fi this time, so we'll see if that makes a difference or not. If the connection cuts out, I'll switch over to data or restart the video or something. But sorry I couldn't do this right after the finish. I was at a barbecue this afternoon and not in a position to go live, so I hurried home and we've got to talk about this here. First off, unequivocally, congratulations to Joseph Newgarden. This is not me, venting out of frustration because of the win or anything. I do think Marcus Ericsson has a right to be very upset and frustrated and livid and all that, but Joseph Newgarden is one of the top drivers of our generation. I said on Grid pre-race this morning, it reminded me actually of Lionel Messi just winning the World Cup several months ago. This was like the last major trophy in this sport. The only thing that was still missing from Joseph Newgarden's resume was the crown jewel, the ultimate prize, the Indianapolis 500, and he now officially has that. His face will be on the Borg Warner Trophy. Much deserved. Like I said, one of the greatest drivers we've seen in recent years, a multiple-time champion already, and as far as I'm concerned, he might add his face a couple more times to that trophy before his career's over. But it's how the race played out, and it's the principle of. This is why I stopped caring about NASCAR as much as I used to when I was a kid, if I'm being quite honest. I don't know what happened to cause this fixation, this obsession that today's fans seem to have with trying to manufacture and get a green flag finish at whatever cost possible. And you couple that with the culture that seems to have taken over IndyCar racing as well, about guys just making daring moves and not being able to so much as get to the finish. That's why we had to red flag this race 3 times. You couple those two things together and it leads to the situation that we saw here today. And I mean, it leaves a sour taste in my mouth. It really does. And I know that the finish, it turned out all right and we didn't have a massive accident on the last lap without a full warm-up lap or anything, but it drives me crazy. This was a statement. I just saw this tweet before I went live here. This is a tweet from Aaron Bearden, snagging it from an Indy Star story from 3 years ago when the race ended under caution after, I believe it was Spencer Pigot was the one that went into the attenuator, and it would have been a really long cleanup if they tried to red flag the race. It was only, I think, with 3 or 4 laps to go, so very similar situation to this year. And the statement came out from IndyCar. It reads as follows: IndyCar makes every effort to end races under green. But in this case, following the assessment of the incident, there were too few laps remaining to gather the field behind the pace car, issue a red flag, and then restart. And oh, how quickly that precedent can change. The first red flag was justifiable. And we'll get into why here in just a minute. The first red flag was absolutely justifiable. And I'm so thankful that tire did not hit anybody in the stands. I mean, if that wreck had happened 100 yards earlier, we might have a lawsuit on our hands or something. We would be having a very different tone, very different conversation right now. Very thankful that that tire stayed out of harm's way. Because even though it missed the grandstands, you've got people camping out around every corner of this track. There were 300,000 some odd people there today. And, very thankful that everybody was all right. So the first red flag, absolutely justifiable. The second one, didn't love it, wasn't a huge fan of it, but you know what? That's the precedent that we've set since 2014. If we have to compromise, and I'm hesitant to be willing to compromise, but in some cases you need to be willing to compromise, I guess. If we had to, okay, fine. Well, you get one red flag. You get one entertainment red flag to try to restart the race and settle it with a green flag finish, and I will take that over extending the race artificially with overtime. I assume that's Joe behind the Grid Network account. Very like a break with a tire. Yes, absolutely. That's what we were talking about right when you came in here. So the first red flag, absolutely. Second red flag, not a huge fan of it, but whatever. The last red flag, from the statement I just read, I don't understand how this is Abu Dhabi 21 all over again. There were too few laps remaining to bring the field down pit road and have a proper restart procedure. Yet that precedent was abandoned because, oh, we have to end the race under green. The 300,000 fans came out today. They deserve a green flag finish. We need to do everything in our power to make sure that they get that green flag finish. And I mean, I don't know where this mentality came from. Where did it come from? Because I seem to recall, I wasn't around in 1998. I was born the next year, but Dale Earnhardt won the Daytona 500 under caution. The famous call that Mike Joy used to bring him home was 20 years of trying, 20 years of frustration. Dale Earnhardt will come to the caution flag, not the checkered flag, the caution flag to win the Daytona 500. They ran a couple laps under yellow. Earnhardt wins the 500. 20 years of trying. He finally gets the job done. And in the words of Mike Joy, every man on every crew comes down from pit road to shake his hand and congratulate him. And everybody seemed to love it. You can go back to 2013 if you need an IndyCar example. Even more recent history, I don't recall a single person having a problem. I mean, Tony Kanaan, granted, is one of the most popular drivers in IndyCar, one of the most popular drivers in motorsport. And it was so great to see him, with his story and everything, finally win the Indy 500 in 2013. He did it under caution. He did it with the same number of laps left when Dario crashed to bring the caution out in that race. I don't recall anybody saying, maybe Carlos Munoz fans were a little bit upset, but I don't even recall Carlos Munoz fans saying, man, they should have red flagged and we should have had a one-lap shootout. This is an illegitimate racing series, and who do these people think they are, ending a race under caution? I don't recall any of that. But it's just like stage racing. It's just like playoffs. It's just like NASCAR Overtime, where the younger generation of fans in particular, they don't know a different era. They don't know a world where we don't do this. And it's been so ingrained in the fans' minds for so long that we come to expect it now. And half the fans seem to love it, half the fans seem to hate it. But the half that love it, that's the reason why we're not going to go back. We are never going to. I am well aware when I bet my frustrations about playoffs and overtime and stage racing and all that, all these gimmicks, all these newfangled great things that somehow supposedly improve the product. I'm well aware we're not going back. I'm well aware that these things are here to stay. This is how we do it now. But, I mean, again, who was asking for them in the first place? I understand the perspective of newer fans who don't know a world different, who say, yeah, I like this. This is cool. But who asked for them in the first place? Who was begging IndyCar to try to get a green flag finish in 2013? Who was begging NASCAR to try to get a green flag finish in 1998? I don't see any of that. I mean, it just drives me absolutely insane. This mentality that the fans somehow deserve. Can we talk about that as well? What do the fans deserve? What have the fans done to deserve much of anything other than being treated to the race that they bought a ticket for? They bought a ticket. They're sitting in the grandstands. That's great. I'm glad you're here. I wish I could have been there. You know, the Indy 500 is absolutely on my bucket list. But races end under caution sometimes. Like, accidents happen. Like, there's no. All right, let me put my phone in do not disturb here. Where was I? My mind's going a million miles a minute here. Let me just catch up on the chat here. I guess what I was trying to say is I don't know who is asking for it. Who's asking for a green flag finish being mandated until we started doing it on the regular, and then all of a sudden it's this thing that we have to do. I haven't gotten an answer why. I've been asking why. The only answers I seem to be getting are because it's for the fans and we need entertainment. Josh, hello, Josh, saying, I'm with you. It delayed us 30 minutes for something that could have ended early. Yeah, well, here's the thing. We got a driver doing the double next year. Kyle Larson's going to be in Indianapolis, and then he's got to hop on a jet over to Charlotte for the Coke 600. What if this happens next year? I mean, I think Larson's kind of screwed, right? They got to start the race at like 10 a.m. If this is going to be what we do, if this is going to be the standard now, that anytime there's a caution within the last 15 laps or 10 laps of the race or whatever, we're going to red flag it to save as many laps as possible, then, I mean, Kyle Larson's not making the start of a 600. Either that or they got to push the start of a 600 back even further. You know, so it's a timing issue. I mean, there's the question that I would pose to people who are defending this finish. If that wreck happens on lap 30, are we going red? I don't think we're going red. I think we're throwing the caution. I think they're cleaning up the track. They, keep running pace car speed. Some drivers come down pit road. Some will probably stay out, depending on what strategy they want to go on. And then we go back racing again. And Josh, I know you've said this on our grid shows as well. The red flag should be reserved for safety reasons when it's necessary. And that is why the first red flag for the incident with Kyle Kirkwood and I think it was Rosenquist, forgive me if it wasn't, my memories, so much happened at the end that when Kirkwood went upside down when the tire went over the catch fence, absolutely, that's a safety concern for Kyle Kirkwood and for the fans in the stands. Absolutely give us a red flag there. I have no problem with that. In fact, I applaud IndyCar. I would have liked to have actually seen them go red a lap earlier. The second one, again, I said if we have to compromise, you get one. You get one attempt. One, we'll red flag it once. We can have a 5-lap shootout. If you want to do that, I don't love it, but I'll take it. A 1-lap shootout in these things? These aren't stock cars. And listen, I know that the race ended cleanly. I understand that. But the possibility, I mean, you saw how aggressive the drivers were. I mean, why did we have to red flag the race twice? We kept stacking them up. We didn't even make it to turn 1 on the restart with 4 to go. So the possibility that we could have seen something very dangerous and very frightening on the last lap, particularly with the fact that there were only 2 laps to go when they refired the engine, so they didn't even have the time to do a proper warm-up lap before the restart, which they would if we have a red flag any other point in the race. It seemed to me like so many procedures were modified or ignored just to do everything in our power to give the fans a green flag finish. And all credit to Joseph Newgarden. Deserves the win. He doesn't make the rules. He went out there, did what he had to do. But that's the other thing as well. Was the finish really that great? I mean, I get why Newgarden fans are excited. I get why Ericsson fans are pissed. But the guy in first was zigzagging down the front stretch, trying to break the draft. The guy in second had the draft. He passed him on the back stretch, as we knew he would because the leader was a sit and duck. Coming out of turn 4, Newgarden tries to break the draft again. Ericsson can't get there, and he wins the race. Did we expect anything different? That is, it's like Abu Dhabi. There you go, Joe. It is like Abu Dhabi 2021. The guy with fresh tires starting in second. Max Verstappen got around Lewis Hamilton because Lewis was a sitting duck. Lewis tried to get him back, couldn't do it. Max wins the race and the championship. What did you expect anything different? Was the finish really that great? Because what happened was what everybody knew was going to happen as soon as the green flag came back out and the green lights came back on. So, again, I hate sounding so negative. I hate sounding so critical, but the people telling me I got into a very spirited argument on Twitter with somebody who threw the line out there if, that was absolutely the right call. And if you don't like that, then you can just go watch something else. And with all due respect, that's got to be the worst, most arrogant argument that anybody can possibly put forward. I'm not criticizing race control or the sport because I just want to be negative or I want to find something to complain about or I'm an Ericsson fan. I have to be neutral now. I work with credentialed media outlets. I got to be neutral. I really couldn't care less who wins or loses these races here. I'm a neutral fan watching to give objective analysis. That's my role here at this point in my life. Newgarden wins, Ericsson wins. It doesn't really matter much to me. So I criticize the sport so heavily because I love it so much. And I want to see it succeed. I want to see sporting integrity upheld. And I don't think we saw that today. I think the rules were modified at the very end solely in the name of entertainment. And to be honest with you, that's why I stopped following NASCAR, caring about NASCAR as much as I did when I was a kid. And to the people that say, if you don't like it, you can go watch something else. I guarantee you half those people are going to turn around on Tuesday when we find out the ratings are down a little bit from last year, and they're going to wonder, oh, why are the ratings down? It's because you told everybody who didn't like that to stop watching it. I mean, we're not criticizing the sport because we don't love it or we don't, we're just looking for something to complain about. We're criticizing it because we love it so very much. And we're criticizing how the finish played out because we want to see, we want legitimacy and integrity to still matter here. And the rules were modified today. I don't think there's any way around that. People are going to try to say that this isn't a gimmick. I'm sorry. If that crash happens at any other point during the race, you don't red flag the race, you yellow flag the race. You change the race procedure to give the fans a green flag finish because the green flag finish is more entertaining than a finish under caution. And I'm with you guys. I don't like seeing races end under caution. I'm not necessarily saying that it's the greatest thing in the world and we should end these races under caution because it's a cooler photo op at the finish line and it's, less dangerous and everything. I'm not advocating that at all. That's way too far. All I'm saying is it should be okay. It should be okay to end a race under caution. It should be we have to remember that this is a dangerous sport and accidents happen sometimes. Sometimes they happen towards the end of the race and, it is what it is. You can't, not every finish can be the most memorable. Not every moment can be a Game 7 moment because when you try to make every moment a Game 7 moment, the Game 7 moments become less special. So that's my my thoughts on the finish here. Again, I'm sorry. I know I'm coming on a little bit later than I wanted to. I was out of the house when the race was wrapping up, so I couldn't go live. I just got back. Now let me catch up on the chat here because I see we do have some people watching. What's up, Joe? I don't know if you're still in here. Joe Tibbles, that is. I think Joe Samiego's still in here. Seth, good to see you. I know you and I might disagree here, but I've got to hold true to my values. Ryan, what's up? Good to see you again. Let's see here. Josh says only one that was a red was Kyle Kirkwood's incident. The others were nothing. Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. The red flag should be reserved for when you need to throw it because the track is unsafe. And the last 2 times it was thrown today, we ignored the rules and the precedent that was set. Let me reread this because I know some people are coming in later here. I read this very early on in the live. Aaron Bearden dug this up from an Indy Star story in 2020 after Spencer Pigot hit the attenuator. And the race ended under caution because he did it with only 4 laps to go and it would have been a lengthy cleanup and everything. This Indy Star story says, it's a quote from the series, IndyCar makes every effort to end races under green. But in this case, following the assessment of the incident, there were too few laps remaining to gather the field behind the pace car, issue a red flag, and then restart. And that was with 1 more lap than what we saw today. So only 3 years later, completely unannounced, I guess the precedent has changed here. And we look at what NASCAR has done. We look at what F1 did at Abu Dhabi a couple of years ago. And this is the precedent now. NASCAR Overtime has infiltrated open wheel racing. And I've just got to say, if you're a fan of that, then good for you, I guess. But it's not for me. And hopefully I've made that clear and not just, talked into a void, but at least given reasoning for why I feel the way that I feel. Joe says, if Santino was leading, will the fans complain about a caution finish if AJ Foyt is going to victory lane? That's another good point. And that's the point I brought up earlier with Tony Kanaan. I don't recall anybody being upset, aside from Carlos Munoz fans, that Tony Kanaan finally won the Indianapolis 500. The fact that it was under caution was irrelevant. This was a guy that had been trying so hard for so long, one of the most popular figures in the sport, and he finally gets the job done. I don't recall anybody saying, oh, well, it's illegitimate because he did it under caution. It doesn't count. Dale Earnhardt's Daytona 500 was illegitimate. It doesn't count. It was under caution. Who was saying that? Who was saying that in 98? Who was saying that about TK in 2013? But I don't know. Maybe some people would have been saying that about Santino this year. Were people saying that about Takuma Sato in 2020? I recall some fans saying that, it was frustrating that we didn't red flag the race. But, I mean, again, if they had red flagged it in 2020, I mean, that would have been especially ridiculous because there was too much damage to the track. It would have been at least an hour-long cleanup, I think. And again, if that crash happens on lap 60, you do it, because you got to run the rest of the race. But when that crash happens with 5 to go, it's going to take too long. And, it's not worth trying to get a 1-lap shootout or a 2-lap shootout just in the name of entertainment. Josh says, I said it in commentary, if you ever wanted a TikTok moment, the last lap and win was under 60 seconds of YouTube short post. Yeah, I mean, barely enough time to get going again. And again, this goes back to me saying, why was the finish really that great? I mean, what happened was exactly what everybody expected was going to happen, because you had the guy leading the race that didn't have the advantage of a draft, kind of a sitting duck. He was trying to zigzag down the front to, prevent Newgarden from getting into. Ericsson was trying to prevent Newgarden from getting in his draft. It didn't work. Newgarden passed him down the back. Ericsson tried to get him back. There wasn't enough time. Newgarden wins the race. I mean, it was the most likely outcome, the most likely scenario, just as it was at Abu Dhabi in Formula One in 2021. So, if that is worth more to you than finishing the race under caution, then I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree. But, it's not even like we got a 2 or 3 wide photo finish in what was the most spectacular moment in the history of this race. I don't even think we got that. It's great for Joseph Newgarden. Congratulations to him. He thoroughly deserves it. He was, in my mind, coming into this race, the most accomplished driver in this series who had still yet to check this off his list. He's now done it. All credit to him. It's not a knock on Newgarden or anything. It's a knock on how race control called the end of that race. Josh also says they look to F1 and Australia. It's that race that set the starting last lap. Yeah, I mean, again, NASCAR at the bare minimum does 2 laps because it gives, I know people have said maybe it should only be 1 on the road courses, but on the ovals especially, I think Daytona, Talladega in particular, it takes you a full lap to get up to speed. So you need to have, 2 laps to give everybody a fair and equal shot. And I don't blame Marcus Ericsson, by the way. I don't blame him for being upset. I don't blame him for saying that, that it was unfair. I want to ask one of my friends was at the race last year when they red flagged the race after Jimmy Johnson crashed. I feel like he said that a lot of fans in his area of the grandstands were not happy when they threw the red flag out. I've been seeing stuff today about how the crowd was cheering when they put the red flag out, and then they cheered when the red flag was put out again. And again, I guess we're just going to have to agree to disagree there. Spidey Ditko says, could it be that these sporting bodies are under pressure to finish the races under green? Absolutely. I don't know who's applying this pressure. I don't know if it's the fans. I don't know who it is, but somebody's got to be doing it, because again, going back to that quote from the Indy Star article, that was 3 years ago, and here we were. I wasn't aware that they were going to throw the red. I wasn't aware of some rule change that signaled that we were going to go red to get a green flag finish here. So I don't know who's putting that pressure on the series. I don't know if that same pressure is being applied to Formula One right now, but we have clearly now entered into an era where green flag finishes matter more than anything else, and will sacrifice what a red flag should be in terms of being thrown out because of unsafe conditions on the track, to the point where we've got to stop the cars and stop the race. Now we're willing to put the red flag out for what should be a yellow flag. And that to me is, like Joe said here in the chat earlier, it's a dangerous precedent to go down. It's a slippery slope, and it's also dangerous because you stack those guys up with 1 lap in the biggest race in the world. I'm impressed that they brought it home in one piece. And they didn't bring it home in one piece last year. This is the other thing. Half the time we do this, we don't even get the green flag finish. We don't even get it. They wreck again anyway. So what's the point? You finish under caution anyway. What was the point in extending the race? What was the point in extending the time of the race by throwing a red for something that should be a yellow? I simply do not understand it. I don't understand why it's so popular. I don't understand why it's become the new trend, the new precedent. I just don't get it at all. Sponsor Spicy Dico says potentially that maybe there are some sponsors that are interested in that. I don't know. If I were a sponsor, my biggest concern would be getting a return on investment here. I don't know that the decisions that race control makes necessarily has much to do with that. To me, it's more about how much TV time am I going to get? How are we going to have sponsorship activation with our race team and our partners there to try to get the word out that we're sponsoring a car. But I don't know. Maybe that could be a possibility as well. Joe says, I agree about the pressure, especially with the largest crowd in the TV audience. Yeah, I mean, I know people online were saying that this was the largest crowd they'd ever seen. And that's great. But I don't care if there's 300,000 people in the stands. I don't care if there's nobody in the stands like there were in 2020. I'm gonna stay consistent on my values and what I want to see, regardless of how many people bought a ticket to watch the race. And I'm glad they did. I'm glad that we had so many people in the stands today. But that doesn't. If we're making our sporting decisions based on how many people are in the seats, then our values, our priorities are not in the right order. If that's what we're going off of, we're not running the sport right. Joe says they need a formal policy on using the red flag towards the end, prevent this mess. Yes, absolutely. Let me tell you something. At the bare minimum, you know what you're getting into in NASCAR. And I appreciate that IndyCar, that the Indianapolis 500 ended at 500 miles today. I truly appreciate that. I will give them that edge over the Daytona 500 because Kyle Busch is still looking for his Daytona 500 trophy because even though he was the leader at 500 miles, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. ended up winning the Daytona, whatever it was, 530, I think. So at least we have that. At least the race actually ended at 500 miles. I guess that gives it a slight edge over NASCAR, but again, maybe that's canceled out because the slight edge NASCAR has in this situation is you actually know what you're getting into. Everybody, like the booths didn't think that there was going to be enough time to red flag the race. A lot of the fans didn't. I thought Marcus Ericsson had the race won. I thought they were going to end it under yellow, and they decided to go with a one-lap shootout, just like we got in Formula One a couple years ago. And last comment here, and then I'll head off here. Joe says, I think they try to avoid potential negative social media. Look at what happened after last week's All-Star race. Well, that's a whole other rabbit hole we can get down. The fan reaction to the All-Star race last week still leaves a sour taste in my mouth. That does as well. But yeah, I suppose that, I mean, again, when you introduce new things like this, half the fans are going to love it, half the fans are going to hate it. And you've gone from maybe a small minority of the crowd saying we should mix things up a little bit by artificially extending the race to, well, now half the fans are saying we've got to get a green flag finish at all costs, and the other half are stuck in tradition or whatever, or they value different things, and so like it's a mess, and there's no going back from this. The fan base is just so divided that no matter what you do, when a situation like this happens, you're gonna frustrate half the fan base no matter what. One more point I want to make on this, and then I'll shut it off here. I think all of this potentially could be avoided if we look at restart procedures and try to find a way to avoid these cars being literally on top of each other when they're coming for a restart. I think that played no small role in the accident with whatever it was, 5 to go, 4 to go, the one that caused the final red flag. If we space the cars out a little bit more, I think that would go a long way in minimizing the risk of having a crash on the restart and having to, throw the red flag to try to do it all over again. If we'd had cars more spaced out on that restart, there's probably a good chance we run those last 4 laps caution free, and it's still not great that they red flagged the race to ensure we got a green flag finish, but I don't think everybody's as fired up as they are right now. I don't think everybody's as divided as they are right now here. So, all right, that's going to wrap it up here for this live. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you if you're watching this on the replay. I'll probably throw this up on my YouTube as well. Joe also says NASCAR postponed on Monday. I guess that might mean we're doing a wrap-up show as well with Grid. So stay tuned for that. Definitely one happening on Monday with my encore show, depending on what happens with the Xfinity race, depending on what time that's going to be. I'll let you all know. But like I said, thank you for tuning in, and come join me on Grid tonight because I'm sure that we're going to have much more to discuss on this subject as well. So hopefully I'll see you all over there. In the meantime, thank you all so much. Have a good rest of your evening.